Whatever you love, it's all right here. DirecTV.
Welcome back to Fox News. We have a very tragic alert for you right now. An incredible plane crash into the World Trade Center here at the lower tip of Manhattan.
It's believed a 737 has crashed into. There's speculation at this point, but at least 3 floors taken out, crashed into the side of the building. Joining us right now, one of the producers with Fox Report, Owen Mugen on the scene. Owen, what do you know? What do you see? Where are you?
Yeah, Brian, I'm on the roof of my building, which is about 5 blocks to the south of the World Trade Center. I'm looking right now at the World Trade Center. There's a massive gaping hole on the second tower. It's about 15 stories from the roof. It's just unbelievable to look at. There's a massive hole.
It looks like something out of a movie. There is a huge hole in the side of Tower Number 1.
Tower 1.
Owen, your apartment is just a few blocks from it. Did you hear anything?
I was lying in bed. All of a sudden I heard what sounded like a plane or something coming extremely low, and then we just heard this shattering explosion. I ran up to the roof and confronted by this horror. There's a gaping hole. I can see the south face, and there are flames. There are papers flying out of the windows, black flames. There are flames coming out of multiple floors.
Did it sound like there is one report on one news channel here in New York City that perhaps it was a jet, perhaps a 737. When you heard the noise, did it sound like a prop job or a jet?
It sounded like a jet, but from where I was, I just couldn't tell. All I know is that there was something flying through the air, and then this massive impact. Whether it was a jet, I just don't know.
Listening to you right now, I hear a lot of sirens. Is that what you're hearing right now? I mean,
yeah, I'm going to move to the front of my, which will. Yeah, you can just see it right now. You can see emergency vehicles tearing south from the West Side Highway, heading toward the scene. There are tons of people in the streets. There are papers, things fluttering out. I can't see any evidence of what it was that could have crashed. All I can see is just this massive gaping hole with tons of black smoke falling out of the building.
Owen, we have a satellite picture right now.
There.
That is it.
A live picture. As you can see, Edie, this is different. This is a different perspective than we saw earlier. The plane obviously went in on one side and came out the other. There's debris all over the ground
broke
down
through
below.
On part.
Exactly. And as you can see, it affects perhaps 10 floors of the World Trade Center building. It is over 100 stories tall. It is the tallest structure in New York City. It is near the flight path for Newark.
Right. And many times, whenever people for Newark, Kennedy, or LaGuardia, when those planes are put into rotation as they're waiting for landing, they circle around this area, which is right near the Statue of Liberty. It is almost 9 o'clock here on the East Coast, and let me tell you, folks are in that building early, and without a doubt, there are many people who were impacted by this.
It's speculated that the plane is as big as a 737. It looked originally like it just hit 3 floors. As I see from this angle, it seems like more than 3 floors, and perhaps what's most disturbing, Edie, I think, is the time of day. This time of morning is when people pour into that building, and it's usually next to full.
Well, you got to also remember, this is near the financial district on the tip of Manhattan. There are so many people at this hour who are in that neighborhood. And aside from the people who are in the building, remember, this is a huge structure, 10.5 million square feet the World Trade Centers take up. And as you can see, for perspective, there goes a helicopter right by it. And it obviously impacted one side and wound up affecting perhaps the other side. We do know there is debris all over the floor, down the pavement down below, and crews are, they've got all the police and the fire department and the emergency technicians are headed to that area. This is horrible.
And also, when you think about what happened to the World Trade Center before, with the bombing there and the chaos that surrounded it, this is a much different challenge, just as grave.
And also, from one of our perspectives, we can see that not only are there gaping holes, but debris continues to fall down below at this hour. As you can see, this is a story of enormous magnitude.
Oh, my gosh.
And we will have all the latest right here on Fox News. Right now, let's hand it over to John Scott. John.
All right, Steve Doocy, thanks very much. We will continue to keep an eye on this developing story all we can do is stare aghast at these pictures at this point. You are looking at the north building of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in Manhattan. These are coming to you live now. Debris raining down from 110 floors up, the uppermost floor, 110 floors up. There are reports that a twin-engine plane slammed into the side of the World Trade Center. Now, something like this has happened before. Back in World War II, an Army bomber lost in the fog slammed into the upper floors of the Empire State Building. The crew of that plane was killed, but that was an accident. It happened in fog. As you can see, this is a clear blue sky day in Manhattan. If this was an accident, it would be a needle in a haystack kind of accident. One has to believe that this was deliberate, although as we are just looking at these pictures, the investigation is not even beginning yet. They are right now trying to get the injured people evacuated from those upper floors. But you can imagine this is a chaotic scene. Remember the bombing back in 1989 of the World Trade Center. That was in a more or less subterranean garage. That was an attempt, again, we're talking about 1989 now, that was an attempt to bring down the building by knocking out the support pillars. What was intended here is anyone's guess at this point. It may have been simply a suicidal pilot who wanted to make a point. We don't know. But you can see that the upper floors of the North Tower of the World Trade Center, once the tallest building in the world, very much involved in smoke and flame after a report of a plane crashing into the side of the building. We have on the phone with us Dr. Vernon Gross. He's a former investigator with the National Transportation Safety Board. Dr. Gross, have you ever seen anything like this?
Well, I haven't, but I'm old enough to remember the B-25 crashing into the Empire State Building, you know, in World War II.
That, as we've said, was a fog. That was an accident, wasn't it? Fog obscured the pilot's vision?
Yes, it was definitely an accident.
Can you think of any reason for a pilot to slam into a building of this height on a day like today if it wasn't intentional?
Well, it could have been some inattention. I wouldn't rule that out. In other words, he might have had difficulty, might have had engine failure, he might have been with his head down in the cockpit instead of looking where he was going, and it depends also on the angle of the sun, for example. Was he flying east when he hit? I don't know because I can't see the pictures.
Even for light planes, there is a traffic way up the Hudson River not very far from these buildings, isn't there?
Oh, yes. The buildings are close to the river, and furthermore, if you've got three major airports in the area, LaGuardia, Newark, and JFK, and it's the busiest air corridor in the world from that point of view, so he could have been confused. And
there are some height limitations. In other words, the planes that fly by there, I'm talking about personal aircraft, light aircraft, and even some, I guess, commercial aircraft. I know that I've returned to the city from time to time and come in at about at a height about level with the top of the building there.
Well, certainly, and you have a lot of helicopter operations in that area down at that low altitude.
So is it in your view, this could have been an accident? We're not necessarily talking about a deliberate act here.
I wouldn't think so immediately at all. You've got to find out why he crashed, and obviously if it's a deliberate terrorist act, then there'll be a message probably from somebody taking credit for it. But right now it sounds as though the early morning sun, we've had drivers in cars get blinded, you know, by the sun. You could have aircraft trouble. So he could be distracted. There's a number of reasons why the aircraft might hit the building.
Eyewitnesses are saying it was a small commuter plane. Again, these early reports are just coming in now from the wire services. A small commuter plane apparently hitting the side of the World Trade Center. Happened, just a few minutes ago, but you can see the smoke. The smoke tower is growing. There is quite a bit of flame inside the building. The two towers home, at least during the day, to upwards of 50,000 workers in those 220 floors.
Right.
I am reminded of a couple of things that happened recently, Dr. Gross. Not long ago, within the last couple of weeks, in fact, there was a pilot who flew. There was another one. We just saw another one. We just saw another one apparently go. Another plane just flew into the second tower. This has to be deliberate, folks.
Well, that would begin to say that, yeah.
We just saw on live television as a second plane flew into the second tower of the World Trade Center. Now, given what has been going on around the world, some of the key suspects come to mind: Osama bin Laden. Who knows what? Eric Shawn is with us. Eric, I know you have a lot of sources at the FBI and other agencies like that. What can you tell us?
Well, first, I apologize for being out of breath because I was walking down Fifth Avenue, which is close to our studios, and I heard a jet, perhaps a 737 or a small Airbus, flying low, unusually low over Fifth Avenue, making a right. I'm not going to say, I don't know, I don't have any reports on what type of plane hit the World Trade Center, but people looked up and it made a right toward the building. John, what we just saw, though, obviously, if that indeed was a second aircraft that hit the southern tower of the World Trade Center, that obviously raises the specter of an intentional terrorist attack here, if that is indeed what we are looking at. I don't know what the reports say of what type of plane hit the tower, but I did see a jet airliner that was fairly low. It was unusual, although not unusual in air traffic patterns, because airplanes that fly to LaGuardia often are vectored down south straight over Manhattan, but of course at an altitude that is far above the buildings clearly, and that the avenue, if you look down Fifth Avenue, oftentimes you see planes, especially the ones from the north, coming down before they vector on a left turn to go up into 1331 or 422, the two runways up at LaGuardia. But clearly this is tremendously disturbing if indeed that explosion that we just saw on television is indeed another airplane. This raises the possibility that is this an intentional attack, a terrorist attack. As we know, the World Trade Center was bombed in the garage back in the early 90s.
We're going to cut away from the live pictures for just a moment to replay what just happened. And I thought when it first happened, I thought it was a replay, but in fact we saw this live perhaps 2 minutes ago. Look at that. A jet plane, clearly a jet plane, a good-sized airplane, slamming into the second tower of the World Trade Center. This after a report of another plane slamming into the North Tower, both towers now in flames. We have reports of at least 6 people killed, 1,000 injured, and clearly those numbers are going to go up. Bill Stokes is on the phone with us. He is an eyewitness to what happened. Bill, we just saw the video of the plane hitting the second tower. What did you see?
Well, I got to correct you and say I wasn't exactly an eyewitness. However, I was an ear witness. I live on Thompson Street in the Village, which looks directly down to the two towers. I was sitting at my desk by the window here working and heard an abnormally low flying plane come right down the street practically, and then followed by a loud bang. People rushed from the apartments onto the street. I've never seen anything like it. Everybody's a little freaked out here.
With good reason.
And there's a sanitation worker that was picking up garbage that actually saw the plane fly down that street over Soho, and he saw it hit. And my question to him immediately was, thinking that this could be a missile, I said, was it a plane or was it a small missile? He said, no, it was definitely a plane, and it seemed like a large plane.
Well, we saw a large plane hit the second tower minutes after the first tower was engulfed in flames. We're going to look at it again. Look at the lower part of your screen. There is clearly a jet, a twin-engine jet, slamming into one side, and then the fireball the debris raining out the far side of the South Tower of the World Trade Center. Now, Erica, I am reminded again of what happened back in 1989. The intent of those terrorists back then was to actually bring down the tower, wasn't it?
Yes, and I would obviously think if anyone is in there, they've got to get out immediately, I would imagine. What we just saw was a twin-engine, appeared to be a twin-engine jetliner. You've got several makes. It could be a 737, perhaps. It looked kind of large, so it could be a 737-800, which is the newest generation of airliners. I think the question is, where does that airliner come from? They're expensive. Was it hijacked? Do we know where it came from? Were there any markings? Were they, are these intentional pilots who are kamikaze pilots executing this kamikaze attack into the World Trade Center? Were they stolen? Are they small Airbuses? Those are flown by U.S. Air. The 737-800s are flown by the Delta shuttle that goes from LaGuardia to New York. You've got the one that I saw going down Fifth Avenue before it made a turn looked very white. Now that could theoretically indicate it would be a Delta shuttle. I'm not saying it is, folks. I don't want to alarm people. Also, Air Canada flies those twin-engine smaller Airbuses down from Montreal and down from Toronto. So I think one of the first things investigators have got to start to do right now is find out where these planes are from, who is flying them, are there any more coming, and what can they do to intercept any others if there are. I imagine that there has got to be a ground hold right now at all the airports in the New York area, as well as a freeze in the air traffic center of all the aircraft around the New York metropolitan area. And if there are any other airplanes coming, perhaps the Air National Guard or others will have to start dealing with this, and in the air, maybe they've already scrambled at the moment as we speak. So I think clearly, judging by the pictures that we've seen, sadly, horribly, what we've long feared and many have worried about and thought could never happen would be a terrorist attack, a deliberate terrorist attack on the World Trade Center, as we are witnessing right now. Not obviously the accident that happened with the Empire State Building back in the 1940s, 1945, a B-24. 25 hit the Empire State Building by accident when he descended through clouds trying to go to Newark.
This is clearly deliberate.
That chilling, horrible scene that we just saw, I think, is attack not just in the World Trade Center, but at the very soul and the very heart of our nation, John.
Kai Simonson is in the WNYW chopper and has perhaps the best view of this. Let's listen into Kai's narration now.
If it indeed were two planes, we did see one. How did they manage to get into the area? And to
you
just
wonder,
hit the plane like that?
These are all the things that we're going to have to be, that are going to have to be answered. How could two large planes just that quickly get out of the control from our local?
Presumably commercial aircraft. Now we can't speak to the first one, but that second aircraft that
to answer that question that is being raised, how could two aircraft get in there so close? Well, if two pilots want to take their planes anywhere, you know, it's a free country, and we don't have anti-aircraft guns on our skyscrapers. I mean, it takes a matter of seconds, literally, for a jetliner to get from Newark Airport to the World Trade Center. A jetliner at full speed could cover that distance in a minute or two. So a couple of pilots bent on destruction, and clearly these could do something like this. Now, again, folks, we have to remind you, 50,000 people work in these buildings each and every day. It happened right at 9 a.m. A good number of those folks were already at their desks. The death toll is certainly going to be tremendous in this tragedy here, and that's all that we can say about it. It is a tragedy. It is abhorrent. It is disgusting. But
John, you have to. I'm, wondering: are these pilots terrorists themselves? Are there terrorists in the cockpit who are holding guns to a pilot's head? Did they?
I can't imagine.
You can speculate completely about how this happens, because obviously it takes a lot of training and expertise to fly a complicated, sophisticated aircraft, whether it's a Boeing 737 or a smaller Airbus. These are not little Cessnas and little Pipers. So there is you have to wonder and raise what possibility there is with the type of scenario that was going on in the cockpit.
All right,
they are whether it's the pilots or if they're hijackers. Intentionally doing this.
A lot of questions still to be answered. Let's listen again to Kai Simonson from the Fox 5 chopper.
The fire department and emergency services can handle both in that confined space without a tremendous
no
death
matter
toll.
how much you set in place, how much you try to prepare for, until it actually happens, it's just not the same thing.
Again, you're looking at a live picture of the World Trade Center, where shortly before 9 o'clock shortly before 9 o'clock this morning, and then shortly after 9 o'clock, planes apparently deliberately crashed into the buildings. Alani DeVito, are you there? Alani DeVito, are you there? I understand we have another eyewitness to this catastrophe. Lonnie DeVito, are you there? Apparently we lost Lonnie, but again...
This may be confusing to some people because in a sense it is a little confusing to me. We every now and then see what looks like, I don't know if it's the bottom of a chopper that is swinging back and forth.
That would be our...
That is ours.
That would be the rudder from our chopper every once in a while.
Hey, Jim.
Lonnie DeVito, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Lonnie. Thank you.
Hi.
This is Jim Ryan in the studio. Could you tell us what you heard and saw when the blast took place?
Right now, I was actually talking to my brother on the phone about what happened. I was on my roof, and I saw something from where I am. I really can't see what it is. I saw something go into the other building, because from where I am, I can see the World Trade Center. I run downstairs, and I see on the news that it looks like another fighter jet is what it looks like. And from my house, I can see all the smoke that's into Dyker Heights. I can see all of that. It's ridiculous. I can't believe all of this is happening, honestly.
You say you're in Dyker Heights,
yes.
Lonnie?
Yes.
Okay. And could you hear the blast from where you were?
No, I couldn't hear the blast, but I saw something, and it didn't look pretty. Exactly how I can't explain it in any other way. I'm in shock right now.
All right, you are looking at live pictures, folks. This is coming to you from the southern end of Manhattan, the World Trade Center, both towers in flames, apparently hit by two separate jetliners. The FBI is now checking out reports of a hijacking just before this terrible, terrible incident occurred. It happened, the first one was hit just before 9 this morning. The second one hit a couple of minutes after 9. John Hyers is an eyewitness to all of this, is on the phone with us. John, what did you see? John Hyers. John, are you with us? All right, we lost John Hyers. We have another view now of that plane slamming into the second building. Look at it. It's coming in from the side, coming low, hitting the building about in the middle. Folks, you see the pictures. It looks like Hollywood, but this is real. The reports are, again, these are very unconfirmed. We're trying to be responsible with what we bring you here. But the reports of a hijacking of a plane coming into the FBI, a hijacking of a plane shortly before this incident took place. Now, you can imagine if a couple of trained pilots, and this would not be beyond the reach of many terrorist organizations around the world, a couple of trained pilots were to take control of one of these sophisticated jetliners. Once they're in the air, folks, they are easy to fly. And you disengage the autopilot, you can take that plane anywhere you want to go. 50,000 people or so working in those two buildings, and both now have been struck by airliners. Our Wendell Goler is at the White House, rather make that Sarasota. He is traveling with the president. Wendell Goler, what's the reaction from the president?
John, the president is here promoting a reading initiative on the second day of a two-day trip to Florida. He just finished reading to some children at the Emma Booker Elementary School and was asked about the incident. He said he was aware of it and that he would have something to say about it later. His aides have been scrambling for the past 15 or 20 minutes, both to find out what is happening and to keep the president briefed as well. Mr. Bush is scheduled to address the school here and then return to the White House later in the day for a congressional barbecue at the White House. One must imagine that he may be going home a little earlier than scheduled, and that the barbecue, if it is held, will be a very somber affair. Secret Service agents are also watching the video on Fox and other television networks. All sense that this may well be a terrorist incident of some kind, and something that will certainly draw the president's involvement. We've got a report from the FBI that a 737 was hijacked very shortly before the second plane flew into the other World Trade Center tower. And as you can aware, the president, who travels with secure communication to his national security staff, is being briefed about this even as we speak. John?
All right, Wendell Goler, thanks very much. Again, the reports are preliminary, and they are as awful as the pictures that you are seeing there on your screen, perhaps even more so, because it raises the prospect. Take a look now. This tape is from earlier, as you see the second jetliner, and we don't have an identification on that jetliner yet, but you see that jetliner slamming into the second tower of the World Trade Center about a couple of minutes after 9 o'clock. The New York Stock Exchange is being evacuated. This is going to cause a great deal of chaos in financial markets worldwide, to say nothing of the absolutely certain loss of life. We have a report of 6 people dead and 1,000 injured, but those numbers are certainly going to go up. The awful part of this is if there was in fact a hijacking, one doesn't know how many people may have been on board one or both planes if in fact they were hijacked. Eric?
The other question is perhaps were they in the air and hijacked? Did they come from Canada? I want to just point out that those the plane that we just saw that crashed into the World Trade Center, it could be a 737, it could be one of the smaller Airbuses that are twin engines that are flown by Air Canada, and they obviously came down from the north. Does that mean they came from Canada? No. But let me just start raising some speculation as responsibly as I possibly can. You know, we don't know what the security arrangements are in every airport around the country. Were these planes that happen to be parked on the tarmac? Were they in maintenance? Were they already on the ground in a taxiway in some airport before they hit? I did see one plane go down Fifth Avenue very low before it banked right toward the World Trade Center. That plane, what my initial thought was that it was a smaller Airbus, but definitely a commercial plane, just like the second one that we just saw hit the World Trade Center in that videotape.
Mark Bernbach, a Fox employee, is on the phone with us. Mark witnessed this from what we understand. Mark, were you close enough to be able to see any markings on the airplane?
Hi, gentlemen. How you doing? Yeah, there was definitely a blue logo. It was like a circular logo on the front of the plane, towards the definitely towards the front. It definitely did not look like a commercial plane. I didn't see any windows on the sides, and as far as I knew when I saw it coming down, I was like, well, LaGuardia is pretty far away, and that plane is really slow, and definitely very low. And I'm completely panicked. You're freaking out. I cannot believe what I just saw.
We are all shaken by this. We are watching the video now back live, but the upper floors of the World Trade Center in Manhattan in flames now after apparently 2 large airplanes, we're talking about jetliners here, slammed into the sides right around 9 o'clock this morning. Mark, if what you say is true, those could be cargo planes or something like that. You said you didn't see any windows in the side?
I didn't see any windows in the sides. I saw the plane flying low. I was probably like a block away from the subway in Brooklyn, and that plane came down very low. And again, it was not a normal flight that I've ever seen at an airport. It was a plane that had a blue logo on the front, and it did not look like it belonged in this area, to be frankly about it. I mean, that's not an accident, in my personal opinion.
All right, let's bring in David Lee Miller, our correspondent. He has an eyewitness with him. David Lee, what can you tell us?
Good morning, John. I'm a few blocks from the World Trade Center right now. As you would expect, all the roadways are pretty much cut off. The only way to get near the buildings is on foot right now. The scene is absolutely a horrific one. You have people streaming out of the area. You've got people literally in tears and shock. People that just worked in the nearby buildings that cannot believe what has happened. Still, many of them remember the terrorist attack years ago on the World Trade Center, and for many of them, this is just an ugly reminder of that, although the details of what happened here are not certain. As I was walking downtown in Lower Manhattan, making my way to the World Trade Centers, I stopped to speak to Sylvia Fuentes. She's with me right now. We're a few blocks away from the building. She works in Lower Manhattan. She used to work in the Trade Center, and I'm going to actually hand her the telephone right now, and she's going to describe for us what she saw this morning as she was arriving at work. Sylvia?
Mitch, Eric,
yes.
Sean.
Hi, Sylvia.
Yes,
Sylvia, go ahead.
I was at the deli on Fulton Street, and I heard a loud rumbling, and when I walked out of the deli onto Fulton Street, I looked up in the air, and there was an airplane actually going into the World Trade Center, and flames were coming out, and smoke was just billowing in the air, and tons of people were running down Fulton Street, just running each other over, and I made my way back to my office on Water Street, and when I got upstairs, I looked out my window to see what was going on, and the Second World Trade Center just went into flames, just from 1 minute to the next.
Sylvia, thanks for that eyewitness report. And once again, David Lee Miller is on the phone with us. David?
I'm sorry, John, I didn't hear you.
Well, I wanted to thank you for that report and for that eyewitness account of what happened.
John, I think it's important to keep in mind this morning that just getting information out is a difficult thing at this time, because there are people running through the streets with their cell phones in hand, many like myself, who are unable to actually get through on the cell system. It is overloaded, and the only way for most people to communicate right now is to find a regular telephone line, because they're just literally thousands of people streaming through the streets, all of them not knowing what to do or what has happened here.
Right. All right, David Lee Miller, thanks very much. Want to bring into the discussion William Daley. He is a former FBI agent. Bill, there are reports that the FBI is looking into the possibility of a plane hijacking. When you look at these buildings are the symbols of capitalism to enemies of America, aren't they?
Absolutely, John. I mean, these have, as we know, were the target of a terrorist attack in this last decade. And by comparison, that explosion, as horrific as it was, certainly pales in respect to what we see happening here today. Just the thought that, when I first heard the reports, by the way, and I heard that a plane had hit the top of the World Trade Center, I thought perhaps it was something that was gone awry, a small plane lost control. Certainly the worst fears of anyone in law enforcement and security is someone directly going after a building, particularly the World Trade Center. Then just a few minutes later, another plane intentionally flying into the World Trade Center just dramatizes the fact that we have a serious, I believe, a terrorist incident here. And I believe that something has happened that has caused these planes to be taken or be commandeered.
We all shared in that hope, Bill, in the early going. In fact, one of our early guests from the former National Transportation Safety Board investigator was saying, hey, this could have been a pilot who was temporarily disoriented, maybe blinded by the morning sun. It has happened before. A skyscraper, the Empire State Building, was hit back in 1945 by an Army bomber. But that was in the fog. This was on a bright, clear morning. And when we saw that second plane slam into the second tower intentionally, quite clearly, you got to believe this is a terrorist attack. It doesn't seem like there would be two suicidal pilots out there who just wanted to, fly their planes into these buildings for whatever reason a suicidal person might want to do that.
John,
Harvey Kushner is on the line with us. He's a frequent guest of ours and a terrorism expert. Harvey, is it too early to speculate about suspects? I don't want to bring up memories of the Oklahoma City bombing when people were talking about Middle Eastern terrorists.
Yeah, obviously it's too early to bring that up. Who might be responsible if in fact it is terrorism? I mean, look, John, I couldn't conjure up a story like this. I couldn't. If I wrote a script like this with two planes, I believe there were two, go into the Trade Center on a clear day like this, somebody laugh at me and say this is beyond bizarre. So one thinks only that this could be the most horrifically planned incident, in the annals of terrorism against the United States. Think about it. I mean, you look outside the Fox studios, look how clear it is. I mean, how could you miss the trade towers? I mean, not just one, but two planes?
Well, and it brings to mind, everybody hates those metal detectors at airports, and everybody makes passing through them almost a joke these days. But clearly, it seems that something is going to change. I guess there are many questions left to be answered about these two planes. It is certainly possible that some terrorist group somewhere bought a couple of small, relatively for them inexpensive jet transport planes for a few $1,000,000 apiece. If you can make this kind of a statement and kill as many people as are likely to be dead in this kind of scenario.
Yeah, John, we're talking about terrorism. No matter how this turns out, this is going to be a day that's going to live in infamy, and, it's going to cause changes in terms of, if it turns out to terrorism, in terms of security like this country has never seen before. And if it just happens to be an accident, it's going to change FAA and NTSB and the whole airline industry and flight patterns over New York, especially if it's a small craft involved or if it's a 737.
I think it's way beyond calling this an accident at this point, Harvey. But
well, I'm trying to be incendiary. You know,
right?
I recall. I'm old enough, unfortunately, to recall incidents in which people from Middle Eastern descent were blamed for the Oklahoma City right out front. You remember that?
Right, I do,
and certainly,
we
you know,
want to stay away from that.
Which occurred with TWA 800 as well.
Right.
But to me, as I said to you, I couldn't conjure up a story like this, John, and I'm sure you've covered news throughout the world. This is something that is just...
This is absolutely
horrific. It's literally
horrific.
put goosebumps. For a terrorism guy like myself, it's put goosebumps on my body.
We're all in that same situation. Harvey, thanks very much. Harvey Kushner is a terrorism expert. We want to go to Dr. Peter Salgo. Peter Salgo, he is not only an eyewitness, but he's now at Presbyterian Hospital working triage. Dr. Salgo, in human terms, what are we looking at here? How many injuries have you seen?
We haven't seen anybody yet. This is all so new that we're all trying to figure out exactly what the response needs to be here. I know that there are meetings going on now to find out whether we should go ahead with the operating room schedule or not. What we're going to need to do if there are casualties that get up to Presbyterian Hospital with regard to the ICUs, with regard to the recovery room status. Every hospital in this city has a disaster plan. And with communications a bit disrupted, the question is really who needs to initiate the disaster plan? Where are the victims going to be transported? We're pretty far away from the World Trade Center. We're up by the George Washington Bridge, which is several miles north.
Dr. Salgo, let me interrupt you for just a moment. President Bush is about to speak. He's in Florida at what was supposed to be a joyous event at an elementary school. Let's listen in.
A difficult moment for America. I, unfortunately, will be going back to Washington after my remarks. Secretary Rod Page and Lieutenant Governor will take the podium and discuss education. I do want to thank the folks here at Booker Elementary School for their hospitality. Today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
Clearly a shaken President Bush, jettisoning what were intended to be his remarks on education. Perhaps a little more education worldwide would prevent this kind of thing in the future, but we are going to be looking at an enormous death toll. 50,000 people work in those 2 buildings. They have been slammed into by airplanes. You're looking at the footage of one of the planes coming in earlier. This is the second plane, a jet aircraft hitting the World Trade Center about 2 minutes after 9, perhaps 5 minutes after 9 this morning. Rita Cosby is on the phone with us, and Rita, I understand you have a lot of new information.
Yeah, John, I have just been told from a U.S. law enforcement official that they're saying it is evident that this is a terrorist-related attack, and among the key targets, key people that they're looking at is Osama bin Laden. It was just last Friday that the U.S. State Department put out a worldwide caution to American citizens traveling abroad and also to U.S. government facilities, and they said that terrorism knows no limits, whether it's on U.S. soil or outside. So they're certainly looking at that as a possibility. What I'm also hearing from my officials at FAA, at the Federal Aviation Administration, is that they believe the first plane may have been an American Airlines plane, a commercial jet, either a 737 or 757, and that it was a hijacked plane. This is what they believe. They're still trying to get this verified, but they did get some reports that there was an American Airlines plane that was hijacked en route from Boston to Los Angeles this morning. and they're saying that there is a strong possibility that that first plane that crashed into one of the towers, which does appear to be commercial, and looking at the video, they're saying appears to be either a 737 or 757, that apparently might have been the hijacked plane. In terms of what the second plane is, they said that does appear, as you've been reporting, John, to be a jet plane, probably a 737, twin-engine jet airplane. And those are the two things that are being looked at. They said at this point there was no direct threat that they were aware of as any specific threat in terms of targeting the Twin Towers there in New York, but that they did have specific threats against Americans and American facilities around the world, and that's why they issued that worldwide caution. We also know that the FBI Rapid Response Team has been deployed. It is en route. Several FBI agents are already on the scene there at the Twin Towers, but they are definitely looking at this as a terrorist-related act, looking at this point not knowing who is behind it, but looking at the strong possibility that it may be Osama bin Laden, the mastermind behind the East African embassy bombings several years ago. Back to you, John.
All right, Rita Cosby, thanks very much. I want to bring into the conversation William Daly. Bill, I know that Osama bin Laden likes airplanes, and again, we are not attributing this act to his organization, but he was implicated in a plot to blow up something like 13 airliners in 13 days, or 8 in 8 days. That back in the Philippines, back in the 1980s, I believe.
Exactly.
Airplanes have been his terrorist weapon of choice in the past.
They have, because they hold for someone like a bin Laden or other terrorists. The fact that you could take a plane and within just the number of people on the plane commit such a horrendous act at one time makes an impact to the world. Combine that with what we see in front of our eyes today at the World Trade Center, and you certainly conjure up the worst possible scenario that certainly law enforcement could think of what a terrorist might do. Before we get on to, possibly bin Laden, there are certainly other terrorist groups around the world that would like to do things like this. The question would be who might be able to actually carry out such an incident, whether by sheer manpower, training, or some other device. So although he's certainly our poster boy literally for terrorism worldwide, there are other groups out there that certainly have also ill intent against the United States. But what we see before us today is, as I mentioned before, is something that in planning scenarios gets almost into the catastrophic, where it's to prevent something like this from happening. Planes fly by, John, as you may know, and I know, having traveled in and out of the city, come up and down the East River by the hundreds each day, by the thousands each week, and passing by the Trade Center.
At rooftop level.
You look down and you see the antenna, you see the windows. So this is something that even on a bad day, they fly up and down that route. Today was a perfectly clear day in New York.
Even if some air traffic controllers saw those airplanes, and certainly they would have been in view of air traffic control, it might not have looked all that unusual.
The first plane, which from my appearance, I saw it over Fifth Avenue heading south when I was coming to work, appeared to be a 737, or as I said, a smaller Airbus. That could fit with what Rita just reported, that her sources are saying that perhaps it was a plane hijacked from Boston, which obviously is north, that is a used air route down through Manhattan before planes make a left into LaGuardia. So clearly, perhaps there may not have been an indication that something was wrong at that time.
I just want to remind our viewers that the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange have not opened for the day for obvious reasons. This catastrophic terrorist attack on the World Trade Center right there in the Wall Street area. The two markets have not opened for the day. No word yet on when they will open, but clearly, given this kind of turmoil, you don't want to throw the financial markets into a complete panic. John Fund from the Wall Street Journal is on the phone with us. John, were you in the area when the planes hit?
I was across the street in my office building.
What did you see? What did you hear?
I heard an incredible sonic boom, and looked up, and there were already much smoke and flames pouring out of the building. And about 15 minutes later, of course, a second sonic boom, which of course would have been the second tower and the second plane.
What about injuries, John?
Well,
can you tell us?
The most terrible and heart-rending thing about this is, about 15 minutes ago, bodies started dropping from the top floors of the tower closest to the highway, about at least 5 or 6, and it was absolutely terrible. Obviously, they had two choices: to be burned in flames or to leap and end it all. It was quite tragic.
So these are people who apparently survived the initial explosion and fire and then found themselves engulfed in smoke.
Yes, and they obviously had no alternatives at that point.
John, I guess you just heard the explosions. You didn't get a chance to see the planes involved.
No, I did not, but I looked up immediately afterwards, and of course the flames were everywhere. There's an enormous jagged hole in the first tower. The second hole in the second tower is much less extensive and much less dramatic, but there's flames out of that too. And of course there are flames burning in the parking lot across the street from the World Trade Center because of debris that has fallen down. And of course there's complete pandemonium here. And every building in the neighborhood is being evacuated or has been evacuated.
Yeah, that's the prudent thing to do, certainly. When we are looking at video of the second plane hitting the World Trade Center, when we saw it happen on live television, as we were talking about what at that point were only rumors of a plane hitting the first tower, then that second one came into view, and it became pretty clear what's going on here. Bill Daley, well, let me bring into the conversation David Asman, my colleague.
Yes, John Scott,
David, what can you tell us?
I just want to give you some late-breaking information. Perhaps one of the things that is of greatest fear is that there is yet another terrorist attack since those two plane crashes happened within 20 minutes of each other. Well, all of Manhattan has been sealed off. This is probably unprecedented. Of course, all of this is unprecedented in this dastardly occasion, but Manhattan has been sealed off. The Hudson River bridges and the tunnels have been sealed. Clearly, there is an attempt right now to thwart any further act of terrorism, act of violence against the people of Manhattan. So Manhattan is in a lockdown. We've heard that phrase used in school shootings. We've heard that phrase used in jailbreaks. I can't recall ever having that phrase used with regard to a city the size of Manhattan. But Manhattan is in a lockdown. It is sealed off. The Hudson River bridges, the tunnels, the east side, the west side, the north, the south. Of course, we are an island here in Manhattan, has been sealed off. One can only guess that the U.S. Armed Forces is now in a state of high alert to prevent any planes or any other vehicular traffic in the air from impacting anywhere in Manhattan on civilian targets. We are a city under siege right now, and the United States of America is warding off any further terrorist threats on the city of Manhattan. John?
All right, David, we'll be checking with the Air Force to find out, and also with the FAA to find out what's going on with the airspace in and around Manhattan. Clearly it has happened with two planes to this point, and well, you just got to wonder what reaction happens next. Let's find out from a former special agent of the FBI. This is Joseph Contamessa, New York Special Operations. He's joining us by telephone now. Joseph, how do you proceed from here?
Well, clearly, when this particular tragedy and criminal act became clear, the FBI, as well as all of the other national security resources, are going to be pulled immediately to identify, is there any other immediate threat? Right now, I think the city is probably taking its best effort now to do a lockdown of sorts. If the intention of these terrorists is clearly to disrupt the American public, well, they have, in fact, succeeded.
Yeah, clearly, a lot of people are terrified. There are going to be scores, perhaps hundreds of dead in those two buildings, to say nothing of the people who may have been on board one of the airliners. Again, one report is that a hijacked airliner, the FBI is looking at a report of a hijacked airliner that may have been the first one to slam into the North Tower of the World Trade Center a couple of minutes before 9 this morning. Agent Contamessa, what about the airspace? Are there plans in place in a situation like this? Can the federal government simply shut down the airspace and keep all airplanes on the ground?
Well, of course, any legitimate aircraft can be controlled totally through the FAA and the various control centers and towers. However, a hijacked aircraft that is under control of...
I want to interrupt you for just a minute. The White House is being evacuated. That comes to us from one of our Fox producers in Washington. The White House is being evacuated, the Pentagon as well. It should be noted that there are sharpshooters on the roof of the White House who have anti-aircraft missiles for just this kind of situation, but the White House is being evacuated. Now, you know that President Bush is not there. He is at this moment in Florida, perhaps boarding Air Force One to prepare to return to the nation's capital. I don't want to incite any undue panic, but there is a report only, of another aircraft that has crashed on Interstate 395, one of the main routes in Washington, D.C. Now, that is only a report at this point, but given the pictures you're seeing on your screen right now, anything is possible. David Asman is joining us from Fox Central. David, what do you have?
John, we are hearing right now of another explosion that has taken place at the Pentagon. We have the heart of the financial district of America being attacked. Now we understand that there is an explosion, there has been an explosion in the Pentagon, the heart of the military command center of the United States of America, John. It can't get much worse than this. Let's hope.
Let's hope. David Asman. That would be right next to Interstate 395, so that report, the Pentagon is next to I-395, one of the main commuter highways in and out of Washington, D.C. So, David, that would fit in with this report that we had earlier.
We must, as we've said before, not only have we not heard that a city is under a lockdown, but we must say we've seen schools under siege. We must say now that we are a nation under siege. Right now, we are a nation under siege. There is a terrorist attack, as you can see, at the heart of the financial capital of the world, and now one at the heart of the military command center of the United States of America, the Pentagon. Apparently, there has been an explosion. We have no further details. We don't know the extent of that, but we do have word that there's been an explosion at the Pentagon as well.
And there are some smoke clouds that we can see in that is the Washington, D.C. area.
You're looking at, I think that's the obviously the old Executive Office building in the foreground, perhaps looking out over with the White House to the left. Now we're back looking at the World Trade Center. This obviously the most public type of attack. This video shown across the world, you have to wonder if the terrorists who are responsible for this horrible act are now watching these very same pictures that we are.
Well, I have a feeling they are. Brian Wilson, our Washington correspondent, is on Capitol Hill. Brian, what can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you that there was no increased security around the Capitol as I made my way into the building, but in the last few minutes we have seen a great deal of action around the city. There is smoke just across the river from the White House, not that far. And as you know, in the last few minutes there are reports that the Pentagon has been evacuated and the White House is being evacuated. Clearly, you're seeing now these pictures from Washington, D.C. as we try to determine exactly what has happened there, but there was an early report of a plane perhaps going down in that area. These are early reports, and we are still struggling to confirm the information. But we can tell you that they're taking things very seriously in Washington in that they are apparently evacuating the White House and the Pentagon. Here at Capitol Hill, Laura Bush is now speaking with Ted Kennedy. A hearing that was scheduled for her to appear at has been canceled. We would be watching very carefully to see whether she is also asked to leave the Capitol and go to a safe place.
Yeah, Brian Wilson, the Capitol is being evacuated, we're told, and clearly that shot that we have on our screen now, this is the Pentagon just across the river from Washington, D.C. You got to believe that it has happened again. Another large airliner, perhaps hijacked, perhaps part of some widespread plan, apparently slamming into at least the area around the Pentagon, along with the World Trade Center in Manhattan, the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in Manhattan. The Sears Tower in Chicago is being evacuated. Clearly, authorities all over the country are trying to be prudent in this unbelievable catastrophe. 2 towers of the World Trade Center, 50,000 people who work in those buildings on fire, the fire out of control. Firefighters are going to take days, perhaps, to get this under control, but the Twin Towers on fire as after being slammed into by 2 jetliners earlier this morning. Bill Daly, let me bring you into the conversation. Actually, Bill, let me interrupt for just a second. Molly Falconer has some updated information for us. Molly? Molly Falconer, are you with us? All right, Bill Daly, let me go back to you for a minute. Clearly a coordinated strike. My heart is pounding. I'm sure yours is as well. What does the FBI do at this point? What does the nation's military do?
Well, certainly the nation's military will be put on alert. This is no doubt about it. Is that, you know, when in the gaming of looking at potential terrorist events, it's always the concern, as David Asman mentioned earlier, that there'll be some type of diversionary incident, and there'll be several others. And I think clearly this is what we're seeing here. The concern is that when a terrorist strikes like this, is that they're going to want to do as much as they can, as quick as they can, because before you know it, there'll be everything will be locked down, as David said, and we will be on a high state of alert. So their chance of doing something more anytime soon will be nil. The opportunity to do that. Also, just speaking from personal perspective, having worked down in the area of the World Trade Center, having been down there as recently as yesterday, I can tell you that logistically, to get people in and out of there, people who are wounded, fire rescue people, is a monumental effort even on a good day, with traffic, with pedestrians in the area. We have the World Financial Center just literally across the street, which I'm sure has probably incurred some debris shattering upon it. It's a tremendous logistical, I would say at this point, challenge and nightmare for people who are trying to rescue, put out the fires that are being, I'm sure, fueled by the jet fuel as well as the interior of the building.
We now understand that the Federal Aviation Administration is shutting down all airline takeoffs nationwide. All airliners nationwide there will be no more takeoffs, and I imagine that the planes that are in the air right now are going to be diverted to the closest airport as soon as possible, because in a situation like this, the authorities don't know where the next one might come from, the next rogue aircraft. We have seen the World Trade Center, both towers hit by jetliners. We've seen the Pentagon apparently hit by a jetliner. Authorities want to take every precaution they can, and so all aircraft takeoffs nationwide have been stopped.
You've got to think that that is an indication one would suspect that this was a hijacking, or at least one of them was a hijacking, because that would indicate that they don't know if there is another plane where it would be coming from. And one way to prevent a repeat, whether it would be a fourth attack, if that's indeed what happened out at the Pentagon.
Well, and we are looking at pictures of the Pentagon area now, Eric, and it's quite clear from the smoke cloud that some enormous explosion hit there.
Would the Pentagon be protected by anti-aircraft missiles such as are at the White House, believed to be at the White House roof? Perhaps this plane, that if it was a plane at the Pentagon, was heading toward the Pentagon, could it have been shot down by our military before it got there? Because that appears to be smoke from jet fuel a little bit away from the Pentagon, not on the actual building itself, as we look at this. But let me again say the plane that I saw was heading here in Manhattan. The first plane that I believe was heading south. It was above Fifth Avenue at a low altitude, which was rare, but it is a usual jet route from planes, especially planes that are vectored down from the north, whether it be from Canada or whether it be from Boston. As Rita Cosby, our colleague, had reported, there are sources telling her that perhaps it was one of the planes was a hijacked plane from Boston.
We have witnesses at the Pentagon who say that a helicopter was near the Pentagon, and then there was an explosion. So again, folks, stay with us. This is all coming into us, breaking news. You can imagine the catastrophe that we're trying to deal with here, but clearly 3 explosions, 2 at the World Trade Center, 1 outside or very near the Pentagon. Molly Falconer is at one of the New York area hospitals and has some updated information on the number of injuries. Molly?
Hi, John. I'm coming to you live from downtown Manhattan, where St. Vincent's Hospital basically looks like it is under siege. There are flares out forming a block perimeter around this hospital. I watched one victim come out of an ambulance, go in on a stretcher. They look exceedingly injured, and right now there are hospital beds lined up on the street right outside the hospital, waiting with paramedics right next to them for the waves of injuries they are obviously expecting to to come in here. There's yet another one. I don't know if you can hear the sirens coming in now. New York City police officers have locked this place down with wooden barricades. More coming in on trucks right now. I'm watching lit flares get put in the asphalt here. There are hundreds of people lined up all around this hospital, and lines of people trying to get on payphones and hard lines just to get out to call into the hospital or call their loved ones. Nothing works down here. Our cell phones are down. All we can watch now are just the sirens and the paramedics on standby. The entire hospital staff.
All right, we have lost Molly Falconer's connection. That would not be unusual given the fact that the World Trade Center is a hub of communications in this city, as well as being a nationwide financial link. Folks, it just bears repeating here. This is a tremendous tragedy, yes, but we are still the most powerful nation on earth. We perhaps will one day find who is responsible, and appropriate steps will be taken. They have not struck at America. They have struck at some individual places in America, but this country will go on. Let's go on to David Asman in Fox Central. David?
John, as we've mentioned before, our job right now, the job of the armed forces of the United States, is to prevent any further terrorist attack. As a result of that, not only is the city of New York in a lockdown status, all entrances to New York have been closed, all airports nationwide have been closed, but indeed the White House has been evacuated, the Pentagon, of course, having been struck by some terrorist act. We're not sure whether it was an aircraft, what kind of an aircraft, but clearly the devastation is visible on the right hand of your screen. The Pentagon is in flames, is engulfed in smoke, as is the World Trade Centers. The Sears Tower in Chicago has been evacuated. Again, no specific information about whether there was a threatened attack on that, but no one is taking chances at the moment. The White House has been threatened as well. This is a shot earlier of that second attack. You see that jet aircraft bursting into flames as it crashes into the World Trade Center within 20 minutes of the other Trade Center tower having been attacked as well. Once again, the nation, as we speak, is under lockdown. Our armed forces are taking all necessary precautions to prevent another attack. Those include closing all United States airports as a result of this attack. As you see there, one that occurred about an hour ago, and an attack in the Pentagon as well. We are a nation under lockdown, and once again, we are prepared for the worst, but we are prepared. John?
All right. David Asman, thanks very much. I want to go to our Washington managing editor, Britt Hume, who has the outlook from the nation's capital. Britt, this raises all kinds of questions about America's response, and I guess that response is not going to be immediate, is it?
Well, whether it is immediate or not, the one thing I think we are seeing, John, is this series of evacuations from various buildings around Washington. And I think it's important to say that we don't know and have no reason to believe that the White House, for example, was facing any immediate or imminent threat. The same is true on Capitol Hill, where it appears they will be evacuating the building up here soon. Nothing has happened at either of those places. Obviously, if you put yourself in the position of officials with responsibility for any of these places, the safe move, in light of what we've seen, is to evacuate places, just as the safe move was for the authorities to close the airports to keep any new planes out of the sky. So I think we have a blend here of things that have really happened, which are chilling in themselves, and things that are happening out of precaution that may or may not denote any particular threat. So it's worth keeping all that in mind. As for whether there'll be any retaliatory action by the United States, obviously that's days away, and we're, if not longer, it may be a long time before we know exactly how this was orchestrated, organized, by whom, and so on. This, of course, though, John, I think this is one of these days where we can say that things will not again be the same in the United States of America. This is the kind of terrorist attack that is the nightmare that experts and others have warned about, but some of us may have thought really could not happen on such a scale. This is quite remarkable.
It is that. Britt Hume in Washington, thanks very much. And I think when the investigation is all over, we will find that this was perhaps somewhat easy to pull off, but that is yet to come. Jim Angle is joining us now from Washington. Jim, what can you tell us about that fire outside the Pentagon? Jim Engel, are you with us?
I can tell you first that the roads around the White House, the streets around the White House, were blocked seconds ago. Members of the Uniform Division of the Secret Service ran out to intersections and started diverting traffic. There are emergency vehicles on almost every block around the White House. The road south of the White House has also been blocked. And as you know, the White House is being evacuated. Federal employees are standing on the street corners in and around the White House, having left the building for fear of another attack. As you come into Washington from Virginia, about 2 miles from the Pentagon, you can see the smoke billowing up from the building. Huge clouds of smoke. So much so that commuters coming into town have pulled over to the side of a busy freeway, what is ordinarily a busy freeway, and are sitting, watching in amazement as the symbol of the United States Defense Establishment goes up in smoke. So there is an amazement all over Washington. People are not sure what to think. You've got a lot of federal employees standing around in this area watching as the streets are blocked off and emergency vehicles rush to and fro. We're not sure what they are up to, but clearly there is concern about the safety of the White House and the surrounding buildings. John.
Jim, do you know anything about what kind of plane or helicopter is involved in that Pentagon incident?
I do not, but I can tell you whatever it is, it caused substantial damage and fire. I can't tell you how large the smoke plumes are coming from the Pentagon.
Folks, Jim, let me interrupt you. We are looking at live pictures of the World Trade Center literally starting to crumble. It is falling apart as we watch these pictures live. The World Trade Center, 110 stories, literally starting to fall. Bill Daley, let me bring you into the conversation. I know this was the goal of the terrorist strike back in 1993.
Yeah, John, it was, and they thought they could do it by putting charges down in the basement and damaging the understructure. As much as these buildings were built to withstand a certain large hit, including some aircraft, apparently the structural integrity appears, from what we can see here, to be faltering to some degree.
They were not designed, perhaps, to take a direct strike from something the size of a 737 or perhaps an Airbus, perhaps fully loaded with fuel. Steel will melt, and that. All right, David Lee Miller is still with us. David, what can you tell us? David Lee Miller, can you tell us what happened there? All right, David Lee Miller, who has seen his share of horrors around the world in trouble spots in the Middle East and elsewhere, is in that area reporting on what we think we can see. I want to stress it's tough to...
Hello?
Yeah, David Lee, what can you tell us?
John, the scene is horrific. One of the two towers literally collapsed. I was making my way to the foot of the World Trade Center. Suddenly, while talking to an officer who was questioning me about my press credentials, we heard a very loud blast, an explosion. We looked up, and the building literally began to collapse before us. There was debris falling, I'd say, at least 3/4 the height of the building. People within the entire perimeter began literally, including myself, which is why I'm out of breath, to run for our lives. And I am now standing in a black cloud of smoke left over from the debris. There's soot. It's difficult to breathe. People ran into nearby office buildings once they got out of the danger zone just to be able to breathe. I'm on a payphone on the street right now, and I literally cannot see more than a quarter block away. That's how thick the smoke is. I'm on Murray Street and West Broadway, for those who know Lower Manhattan. Not clear now is why this explosion took place. Was it because of the planes that two planes dual attacked this morning, or was there some other attack which there has been talk of here on the street? But I can tell you this, that the police have moved people back, and it's going to be a long time.
Yeah, David, we are looking at the replay of what happened that you're describing. It happened just moments ago. It sure appears that the building simply collapsed based, yeah, David, if you're still with us, please keep on the line. It appears that the building simply collapsed of its own weight, that there was so much damage from the heat of the fire. As I said, steel will melt. The second, that was the building that was hit by the second plane, the plane that we actually saw hit the building live during our coverage. That is the building that has just collapsed. Now, it bears noting that that plane seemed to come in at a lower altitude. It hit the building lower down, and there was that tremendous fireball. So the damage to the building came at a point where there is much more weight on top of it, and those steel girders, strong as they are, had a lot of weight to support, and apparently, I'm not a structural engineer, but I'm just guessing now that they gave way. The loss of life here is going to be enormous.
May God help those who are there, and the victims and their families, and all the souls that are lost today.
I think it's safe to say that virtually every family in America is going to be touched by this disaster.
This is what the terrorists back in 1993 tried to accomplish when they drove a van laden full of bombs into the garage, and apparently they were successful. John?
Let me bring in the former governor of New York, Mario Cuomo. He's with us by telephone now. Governor, what's your reaction? That's the only thing I can ask you.
It's the same as everyone else is. Everybody now is holding their breath and measuring the extent of the tragedy as it grows from moment to moment, and that will be the story, I'm sure, for the next 24 hours, is how much damage was done. I think the longer-range story is even more terrible. The longer-range story is who did it and why. And if it were a nation, it would be easy to deal with, but it's not a nation. It'll be individual terrorists.
Excuse me, Governor, can you hold on for just a second?
From the tower, from right to left, I guess west to east, and everything just all of a sudden just imploded. I ran as fast as I could, went inside of a building about a block away. I stood in the building for a couple of seconds, and then all of a sudden the building started filling up with smoke. I was with a bunch of law enforcement officers. We couldn't get out of the building because everything was locked up. And then I came out, and everything was filled with ash, and it looks like I'm in a surreal movie.
Do you know if it was an explosion or if it was a building collapse?
To me, it sounded like an explosion. Then the building, the rolling sound sounded like the building collapsed.
Were there other people? There must have been a lot of people on the ground nearby when it happened.
Oh, where that happened, there was mostly law enforcement. I don't think there were many civilians there. I don't know.
Don't move, Pat. How many people would you say were on the ground when the building exploded or collapsed?
Law enforcement, over on that corner there, I don't know. There might have been 100, 150. I don't know.
What's your full name, officer?
Police Officer Gronowski.
All right. Thanks a lot. Good luck.
Folks, you're looking at live pictures on the left of your screen. On the right of your screen, the tower, one of the twin towers of the World Trade Center.
There's thick ash on the ground, lots of it. Pandemonium here a short time ago. When the building did collapse, or whatever it was that happened, it was a huge explosion, a huge rumbling cloud of smoke and fire came across Church Street and then started billowing this way, and all we saw was people running in this direction. Everyone, law enforcement, people, a woman pushing a baby carriage. This is actually, we believe, debris from one of the planes that hit one of the towers on the World Trade Center. The FBI is here, as you can see. They had roped this area off. They were taking photographs and securing this area just prior to that huge explosion that we all heard and felt. We'll try and talk to some of these guys. Can you tell me what you saw, what you heard?
So nothing.
You all right?
All right.
Where were you, sir, when that happened?
Right on the street.
What did you see? What did you hear?
It felt like another plane coming. Everybody took cover to run. We ran down the subway, but the dust followed us down there.
Were there a lot of people in the subway?
No, not that many, because they already had evacuated before.
Did you see people, anyone in danger, anyone getting hit when this?
Not back there, yeah, but I was running. I mean, there was nothing you can do because you just saw the thing coming right over.
Have you seen, were you able to see the tower after?
No. What do you mean, since it happened now? Since the fire?
Look at this guy. Look at this guy. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The streets have been shut down. There was very little traffic on the streets except for emergency vehicles going one way or the other. So there was not a lot of vehicle traffic in this area, but there were a lot of pedestrians on almost every single corner taking photographs and just looking at the building, which was still smoking and still on fire. A lot of police officers at the back.
Officials up there that were right near the building.
Where were you when the explosion occurred, when the plane hit the building?
I saw it from my office, as a matter of fact, down the Lower East Side.
So you came here?
Yes.
To check it out?
Can help. No, what do you mean? To see if we can help, but this is...
Yeah. This poor woman. Wow.
Rick Leventhal is the one reporting on the ground. He's not able to hear me at this moment, but Rick...
Just the sound of a plane.
Sergeant.
All right. What are you guys doing right now? What's your assignment? What's your assignment?
Help people.
Are there a lot of injured? The dust is still thick in the air. What that guy is covered with is this stuff that's all over the street. Just thick soot, ash. Just came roaring down here in a huge cloud from the World Trade Center. You see just the survivors, if you will. Are you able to talk? Can we just talk to you about what happened?
I was there when it exploded.
You were right there at the building?
Yes, a lot of people trapped.
A lot of people trapped. EMT. This guy needs help.
Rick Leventhal is not able to hear me, but from his vantage point on the ground, I think it's not clear to him what's fairly clear to us, our vantage point from the helicopter, that the top of Tower 1, One World Trade Center, has literally crumbled. I can't guess how many floors, perhaps 30, perhaps 40.
The tower itself is, what I think, 107 stories tall, Tower 1 and Tower 2, one in the south end, one in the north end. It appears that the first plane that hit the one on the north end. That has the restaurant, Windows in the World upstairs, and then the south tower appears to be the one that was hit the second time. That has the observation deck. That is a obviously popular tourist attraction for people. So clearly, as we see, a pandemonium. But you know, John, the FBI and the New York City Police Department have the Joint Terrorist Task Force. They have obviously experience with this. They were able to solve the others, and I'm confident, and we should be confident that...
Let's go to Brian Wilson now. He's at the in Washington. Brian, is there a report about the Pentagon?
Well, I can't tell you about that, but I was just here in front of the Capitol, which, by the way, has been evacuated, and back toward the Supreme Court area, we just heard a low, muffled thud. It sounded like a small explosion. Sirens are going off around this city like you cannot believe. And just overhead a moment ago, something I have never seen in Washington in the 16 years I've been here, military jets are now patrolling the skies over Washington, D.C. We'll try to find out more about that explosion, but it was a low thud, and I'm now seeing that there is a great deal of activity over toward the direction of the Supreme Court.
All right.
Back to you, John.
Britt Hume is with us. Britt?
John, I'm looking now on one of our remote cameras here at a picture of the scene at the Pentagon. This is a picture looking down Interstate 395, which is, you probably know, John, is a major thoroughfare in and out of Washington that is used by commuters every day in large numbers. And we're getting a sense that from a reporter out there at the scene has just said that there's been another loud bang out there, whether that is a further explosion initiated in an attack or whether it is simply a secondary blast, the result of the continuing fire. But the situation there at the Pentagon continues to evolve. We'll keep you posted.
All right. Britt Hume in Washington, thank you. Our Rick Leventhal is on the ground in Lower Manhattan, where these scenes of chaos and utter confusion are just mind-numbing. Rick, go ahead. Rick is not able to hear me, but this is the scene in Lower Manhattan where the upper floors of the World Trade Center, Tower 1, apparently have completely collapsed.
5 blocks from the World Trade Center, and we were standing here when there was some sort of collapse or explosion, and everyone started running in this direction. Police officers, pedestrians, EMTs, everybody came running this way. I saw a woman pushing a baby carriage, running for her life, and right behind them was a huge cloud of billowing smoke and ash and debris coming this way. The smoke is obviously cleared somewhat. Ma'am, she's with DCPI. Can you talk to us for just a second? Bring us up to speed. Obviously, people have their hands full out here. It's not easy getting anyone to talk. Yeah, tell me where you were, what happened, what did you see, what did you hear?
First, I went on Canal Street, I saw the fire. I saw the two buildings. I think it was a bomb because it's two of them. Anyway, when I got there, I tried to save people because I'm a doctor. When I tried to save people, in the moment we heard a big explosion coming down. Everything just went black. Everything came down, glass started popping. People got hurt, stuff went on top of them. And it was a big explosion and everything got dark, real dark, like snow. You can see behind me, oh, this is not snow, this is all from the building. It was a terrible nightmare.
Where exactly were you standing when this happened?
I was standing right in front of the World Trade Center.
So you were down the block here? And
Right
you came
there in the
running this
middle,
way?
right, yeah.
Did you get hurt at all?
No, not me.
Did you see anyone around you getting caught up in it?
Yeah, I was with the firemen. We got hurt. We all went inside to this dark. We was inside the building when everything happened, but we came out alive.
What's your name?
My name is Dr. Angel.
Were you able to assist anyone before this happened?
Yes, I did. I help a lot of patients. A lot of them.
Well, there are a lot more people that need help now.
Need help,
so
yeah.
if you're capable, maybe you should.
Yes, I'm gonna go back. I lost my ID, but I try to go back.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot for talking to us.
All right, that's what Rick Leventhal has for us down in Lower Manhattan, where chaos and utter confusion reigns. This is clearly a national catastrophe. There will be some response from the White House. Let's go to Wendell Golder, who was traveling with the president in Sarasota, Florida, and find out what the latest is there. Wendell?
John, the president left Sarasota, Florida. Air Force One took off just a short while ago. Mr. Bush returning to Washington to convene a meeting of his national security advisors, including the vice president, the heads of the CIA, the National Security Agency, and the FBI, and also New York Governor Pataki. It is unclear now whether that meeting will be held at the White House or elsewhere, given the explosion just a short distance away from the White House on the other side of the old executive office building, and the evacuation of the White House itself. Mr. Bush cut short a two-day trip here in Florida that was focused on education after the two attacks on the Twin Towers in New York. He was briefed by his national security advisor, Condoleezza Rice, who phoned him after the first attack. Mr. Bush was actually reading to some children when the second attack occurred. Chief of Staff Andy Card interrupted him, told him about the attack. It was clear at that point we were dealing with terrorists. Mr. Bush cut short his trip and flew back to Washington. John?
All right, Wendell Golder, thank you. Just wanted to update you that some of the hospitals in New York are already at capacity, not accepting any new patients. There could be tens of thousands of injuries. Let's listen into what Rick Leventhal is learning down in Lower Manhattan.
Lying down, and then I looked up and I saw this huge plume of smoke and the tower just crumbling, and it just turned into a huge plume of smoke. And next thing you know, there's smoke in one tower, and that's what we're seeing right here. So, and obviously there's people are worried about the press agents and everybody else that went the other way as everybody wants went this way.
When you saw this collapse taking place, could you see if there were a lot of people on the ground near the building as it was happening?
No, I was further north than you were, but I was dead looking at 6th Avenue, the view you see of both towers as you come down 6th Avenue.
Right.
So, and then most of this fallout stops about 4 blocks back.
Give me a look down this way, Pat. You know, it does sort of look like beyond a few blocks down, it looks almost clear. But it's anything but over here.
I live at 25 Lawrence Street, a couple of blocks from here. I'm all the time hanging out in the corner on the liquor store this morning. I saw the plane coming this way in the spot. Goes factory directly to the building.
Was this the first plane or the second plane?
This was the first plane. The second plane, no second plane. It was a bomb. Bombed in the building, not second plane. That was a bomb. Who said the second plane?
That's what we're told, the second plane.
No,
we saw it on television.
I saw everything.
All right, thanks a lot. This is...
In case you're just joining us, this is the aftermath of a horrific event that began unfolding about an hour and 20 minutes ago A jet plane slammed into the side of Tower 2 of the World Trade Center. Then a few minutes later, another jet slammed into Tower 1. The second Tower 1, I should say, the upper floors have collapsed. They're absolutely gone.
I was in the restroom. There was a big shaking. Some of the ceilings collapsed. Looks like there was a fire in the elevator shafts. And they brought everyone down and started bringing everybody down the stairs.
So you came down from the 77th floor.
77th floor, down the stairs.
Down the stairs.
Yes.
What was happening around you? People screaming?
No, people were pretty calm. When we got down to 6th floor, there was like another shake or another explosion. Everyone started panicking, but everybody was really calm, and the police and firemen were very helpful.
Which of the 2 towers were you in?
1, World Trade Center 1.
All right. And when you got to the ground, then what?
It's just like, it's like rubble and dust, like inches thick, and like paper everywhere, and they just moved us out.
How many people do you think were in the building on the floors that were affected? What do you think?
I mean, I'm one office out of 20 on that floor, so I have no idea.
How far above you or below you was the impact?
I think it was above us. I don't know how many floors. We saw it on TV, but I don't know.
What's the first thing you thought when you heard it?
Had to call my wife.
Did you? Were you able to?
Yeah, I got through a phone line. I called her. I'm talking to you because I'm hoping she's watching so she knows I'm okay.
What's your name?
My name is Matthew Gard.
Folks, clearly America is under attack. We can only hope that it's over, at least for now. Our David Schuster is in Washington, where there have been 1, perhaps 2 explosions at the Pentagon. David, what can you tell us?
John, I'm actually in our office here at the Pentagon, and according to counterintelligence sources, they confirmed that it was a plane that crashed into the south end of the Pentagon near the helipad. This is a route that commercial aircraft flying into National Airport, which is just a few miles away, they take sometimes on final approach as they come to the airport. But again, intelligence sources, counterintelligence sources confirming that it was a plane that crashed on the side of the Pentagon. Now, here in our Pentagon office, our producer Chris Wright says that there was no shaking of the building or even sounds. Of course, the Pentagon is built to withstand attacks perhaps like this one, but we are getting reports from eyewitnesses who were on Highway 110, which is just west of the Pentagon. One eyewitness claiming that he saw a U.S. Air 737 plane headed toward...
All right, let's listen in now to WTTG's coverage there outside the Pentagon. This is coming to you from the Washington, D.C. area.
Okay, thank you. Hello?
The Pentagon, the world's largest office building, being evacuated. Britt Hume, our Washington managing editor, is still with us. Britt, go ahead.
Well, John, what you're seeing there is that is the interstate, or the Route 395, used to be known as the Shirley Highway, that comes up into Washington, as I mentioned earlier, a familiar commuter route. And what you're seeing there are the military personnel evacuating the building. Some, as you know, as we noted just a minute ago, or as you could see just a minute ago, were on the run. Now, we have, John, from sources, intelligence sources, what may be a claim of responsibility. Now, I want to caution you before I note this, that at times like these, all sorts of claims are made. So this needs to be treated with some caution. But some intelligence sources are now saying that the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine is claiming credit. In the meantime, however, the Israeli government is said by sources to believe that Osama bin Laden is responsible for the operation, and those two organizations are related, but they are not exactly the same. I suspect, John, before all is said and done, we will hear more on that aspect of all this. But obviously that is something that we're all keeping an eye on to see if some kind of authenticatable or credible claim of responsibility for these astonishing attacks is made that we can believe. Again, you're looking again at the interstate road, Route 395 that runs down past the Pentagon. That is just, of course, across the river from Washington, D.C. And the smoke you're seeing is indeed from the area out by the helipad, which can be seen by drivers as they go by the Pentagon. And you're seeing the smoke from it. It appeared from some pictures we saw earlier, John, of the building itself, that while it was clearly damaged, and in the area where the hit was very badly damaged, it did not look like the damage to the overall building, which is massive, was all that extensive.
Right. Well, that is perhaps a touch of good news. Britt Hume, thanks very much. Let's go back to our man in Lower Manhattan, Rick Leventhal, who is, again, not able to hear us. but trying to bring you from the ground the perspective of what he witnessed, felt, and heard. And I think Rick is not clearly aware, as we are, that the upper floors of Tower 1 of the World Trade Center have collapsed completely.
And, you know, it felt like a bomb hit or a plane hit or something like that. But the whole floor was...
plane did hit.
A plane did hit. Yeah, and then we looked out the window, all we saw was debris all over the place. But we thought the building was going to topple over. It was going so...
Well, one of them did.
One of them did. We were in Tower 1. We made it out.
Well, you're a lucky man.
Thank you very much. Okay, thanks.
All right, take care.
Clearly, this is a nationwide catastrophe, but folks, phone lines in New York are virtually shut down, so you're not going to be able to call your loved ones. If you have any other way, perhaps email. If you have any other way of contacting your loved ones, try and do it without using the telephone, because telephone lines in New York are at gridlock right now. Let's listen in again to this eyewitness.
I have a lot of faith in God, and I hope a lot of other people made it out the building as I did.
All right, thank you. Tell me what you saw. Stop and talk to us. Where were you?
Top of the roof, 25 Park Place. Me and a super heard the loud noise from a jet. We look up and we see this big jet, like a 737 or a 720.
It was a 757?
About that, it was a big jet.
Yeah.
We saw it come just looking like it's sideways. At first, we thought it was just going to try to miss it. Bang! Right into the middle of it, like around the 70th floor. And then half hour later, we see the second one bang into it. We're on the roof of it. We're a block away. I mean...
What's going through your mind when you see this happen?
You see bodies flying out of the sky and you can't do nothing about it. You tell me. You tell me what you think. I mean, my heart's in my mouth. I mean, I pray for these people. There's no words to describe what's going on out there. I mean, you see bodies just coming a half hour later, still coming out of the goddamn sky. It's devastating. Devastating. I can't imagine anything worse than this. There's got to be... I can't imagine. You know, everybody on the plane must have died. The floor, I got friends of mine on 104th floor, friends on other buildings. I just spoke to one of my friends a half hour prior to that, getting ready to go upstairs to go to work. It's devastating. I mean, I've seen a lot of construction accidents. I've seen a lot of bad things happen. Never seen a jet fall out of the sky into a building, no less once, but twice. Devastating.
I want to bring into the conversation General Al Haig, the former Secretary of State. General Haig, at a time like this, how does America respond prudently, with the proper amount of caution, and yet with whatever force needs to be applied?
Well, first we have to know the full limits of this tragedy, and it's unprecedented, of course. But we have to stay above all united and calm and ready to take resolute action, which sometimes we have failed to do in the recent past, when the perpetrators are uncovered, and we have many, many indicators of precisely who they are. This was too broadly based a terrorist act to be just a few crazies. This is a terrorist movement, and we know where they're located today. And obviously, as a nation, we're going to have to take action against them.
But clearly that action is going to be some days, if not weeks or months away.
Oh, it has to be very carefully assessed before any action is taken, of course. And we have to be reasonably assured that those that we are moving against are the perpetrators. And I think we know where to center our look. All we have to do is look at the world today with the Palestinian and bin Laden groups.
Who are the terrorists that you think are the most likely suspects?
Well, I'm not going to speculate because I don't have inside knowledge, and it would be rather foolish to do that. But I do think we have the means to assess it, and there will be many statements, many parties claiming credit, somehow already have done so, for the World Trade Center bombings.
Clearly, with what's going on in the skies, where even apparently innocent civilian airliners can be employed as weapons of terrorists, what is our military doing right now, General Haig? What should they be doing?
Well, they have to be on full alert, and I would have hoped that we would get some aircraft up in the air to enforce the ban on flights. That has to be done if it has not already been done. and I'm sure it has been.
We saw the same thing.
All right, General Alexander Haig, former Secretary of State, thanks for being with us. Rick Leventhal once again with our producer Carlos Van Meek is in Lower Manhattan. You cannot even see the sky there because of the soot, the ash, the crumbled concrete that is continuing to rain down after one of the two towers of the World Trade Center, the upper floors, collapsed. This after this apparent terrorist attack this morning that sent a large jetliner, perhaps two large jetliners, slamming into the Twin Towers.
Come over this way, Pat.
You can see the chaos.
Bill, we can see the top of the building from here. Oh, yeah. Oh, there it goes, there it goes, there it goes, there it goes. Oh.
When it comes down, we're...
All right. We do need to put it down now. I think we need to put it down now. Here we go.
America, offer a prayer. According to American Airlines is confirming that its Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles was hijacked today, and that its plane was the first one involved in this attack on the World Trade Center. Brian Wilson is on the phone with us now from the Washington area. Brian, what's the latest?
Well, I wanted to tell you, John, that I'm in front of the Capitol, and a moment ago, police officers ran up to us and ordered us off of the grounds and told us, and I quote, there is a plane that has been hijacked. It is 20 minutes south of Washington. This was about 10 minutes ago, and is headed this way. They are taking ultimate precautions. Now, as you know, in these chaotic situations, sometimes information gets twisted. But police officers here are saying that they believe there is a hijacked plane now headed toward Washington. And that's all the information I can give you at this moment.
All right, Brian, we had a report from you earlier that military aircraft are circling the Capitol. Is that still the case?
They have not seen them in the last few minutes, but there were military jets above the Capitol a few moments ago. Of course, you know, John, this has been the nightmare scenario for security experts in Washington, that many of the buildings in Washington, very visible from the air, are very vulnerable. In fact, the flight path to National Airport runs literally 6 blocks from the White House. So this has always been a big concern. But again, to repeat the information that I have here, Capitol Police have completely evacuated the grounds of the Capitol, and they have told us, quote, there is a plane that's been hijacked. It is south of Washington, headed this way. Now, the reliability of the information I cannot give you, but that's what police have told us.
All right, Brian Wilson, thank you, and let us know if you come up with any new information. It is hard to describe, folks. The pictures show what has happened in Lower Manhattan, but we don't have a handle yet on the devastation. I remind you again that there are perhaps 50,000 people who work in the World Trade Centers, the two towers, and those towers are virtually gone now after this apparent terrorist strike earlier this morning. How many of those 50,000 people they were able to get out, we don't yet know.
That is the heart of not just the financial district, but many national, international corporations. I mean, look at that smoke, the dust, that plume that has just engulfed blocks and blocks of Lower Manhattan. You have the Wall Street Journal down there, many, many corporations and offices. So I think we must say a prayer, and our heart certainly goes out to everyone who is there right at this moment, as well as the New York City Emergency Command Center is at the foot of the World Trade Center. I think it is, John, important for us to take a moment to say a prayer, remember these people, and hope that God gives us grace.
And take a look at the poignant picture you see there. The Statue of Liberty, folks, is still standing, and I think that's important to remember at a time like this. The World Trade Center has collapsed, and the casualty figure we cannot even begin to guess at this point. Our David Lee Miller is with us, we're glad to know, from the City Hall area. David Lee, what can you tell us?
John, just seconds ago there was a huge explosion, and it appears right now the second World Trade Tower has just collapsed. The debris and the smoke is so thick where I am that, again, you cannot see the World Trade Center, even though we're just a few blocks away. But it appears the entire building has collapsed. People are literally running through the streets. They are running from Center Street in Lower Manhattan, trying to get away from the smoke, which is absolutely choking. It is difficult to breathe. There are people in front of me wearing gas masks. The cell phone service is virtually non-existent. There are lines of people to use the few payphones that are available, and people are literally hysterical in the streets, worried about loved ones who were in these two buildings. Moments before the building collapsed, I was outside, and after the first collapse, the authorities began to move people away from the perimeter. They feared that the second building would collapse. They warned people of that, and they began to push people away, including reporters, including myself. And right now, there's nothing here but shock on the streets of Lower Manhattan. John?
All right, David Lee, stay safe. We are looking now at pictures, this of the second of the two World Trade Center towers collapsing after that awful, awful event. Let's just recap what's happened so far today. Two planes, one of them at least apparently hijacked an American Airlines plane, slammed into the side of the World Trade Center a little before 9 a.m. Then, as we watch now this picture, a second plane slammed into the second tower of the World Trade Center. That tower collapsed first. It burned for a while and then collapsed. And you can see these pictures as that tower collapses. Not long ago, the second of the two towers collapsed. Now again, there are perhaps 50,000 people who work in these buildings on any given day. Not all of them would have been at work yet, but clearly a great and monumental loss of life. Also in Washington, the Pentagon has been under attack. At least one plane slammed into the Pentagon. David Schuster is an eyewitness to that, and is joining us now. David?
John, the Pentagon is now being evacuated. You may be able to hear some of the sirens going off in the Pentagon. There's smoke billowing down the hallway. Eyewitnesses describe a U.S. Air 737 plane on what seemed to be headed towards National Airport at approximately 9:40 this morning, when it then crashed into the south end of the Pentagon. The eyewitnesses describe a huge ball of fire, the plane apparently hitting by the helipad, which is near Highway 110 and Highway 395, the main arteries into the city. There have been unconfirmed reports of second explosions here at the Pentagon. We have not confirmed that, but again, the counterintelligence sources confirming that it was a commercial aircraft apparently hijacked that crashed into the Pentagon. The building has been evacuated. There are reports of safety precautions being taken at the Central Intelligence Agency, at the National Security Agency. Capitol Hill has been evacuated. The White House has been evacuated. But here at the Pentagon, I was actually in a taxi cab on Highway 110 when suddenly smoke started billowing out of the Pentagon. Very quickly, you heard ambulances and fire trucks headed that direction. Chris Wright, our producer at the Pentagon, who is on the northern side of the Pentagon, says he could not hear the explosion or feel any aftershocks or anything. Obviously, the Pentagon, a very large building meant to withstand terrorist attacks or any sort of other attack. But again, eyewitnesses describing a U.S. Air 737 crashing into the Pentagon at approximately 9:40 this morning. The Pentagon, except for some personnel, the Pentagon being evacuated, and we can actually smell some of the smoke now in the hallways here on the north side. John.
David Schuster in Washington, thank you. Britt Hume is with us once again, our managing editor in Washington. Britt, chaos and pandemonium, but how do we measure the response here?
Well, John, one thing worth noting is that you're going to hear all kinds of further warnings at a time like this, and precautions being taken. We've just learned, for example, that police have been sent to Union Station. A bomb squad has been sent to Union Station, which, as you know, John, is located just a couple of blocks from the Capitol. In fact, it's just adjacent to our Fox News bureau here in Washington. One senses that there will be many squads and many alerts and many more than there will be things found, but nobody's taken any chances in this town at this hour after the astonishing events that have unfolded so far here today. And, of course, you've been seeing the pictures and hearing the reports from down there at the Pentagon. Who would have imagined such a thing? It appears that the damage to the Pentagon, as bad as it was, we don't have any sense of whether there was loss of life or how extensive it was, that is an attack that looks like it could have been very much worse indeed had the airplane hit in a more central area of that building. So we're now watching, of course, the Capitol building with considerable urgency. It's right out the window of our bureau here. Because, as Brian Wilson reported, police on Capitol Hill are evacuating the place, saying that there was an airplane 20 minutes away, apparently, or they had reason to believe that it was headed this way. Now, we know their jets have been scrambled and have been in the air. It is hard to know whether a plane would ever be allowed to get close to Washington, D.C. in the air with all the airports closed at the moment or not, but that obviously is something we're watching with considerable interest and worry here.
All right, Britt, I just want to update you while you've been talking. Authorities at the Somerset County Airport confirm a large plane crash about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. We're trying to deal with only facts today and not rumors, because there are plenty of those swirling around, but we do have a confirmation of apparently another plane crash about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. You've got to assume that it's related to all of these goings-on, but we don't know any more information than that. Rick Leventhal, we are glad to know, is still with us in Lower Manhattan. Rick?
Yeah, John, we basically ran about 5 blocks down Church Street north, away from the World Trade Center, as that second tower was collapsing. A similar scene to the first one, where huge clouds of smoke began billowing down the street at us. And in fact, because of the location of the tower, it actually came down cross streets. So as we were running north on Church, we were passing cross streets, and the black clouds of debris and smoke were coming towards us down the side streets as well. So we were about 5 blocks, we're about 6 blocks north of where we were before. Things have settled down a bit now. The smoke is starting to clear. We've seen more injured coming our way, and there's a lot of police activity on the street. But a similar scene to what we saw earlier as the first tower collapsed. Only this time, people were ready for it, or more ready for it, and reacted swiftly. John?
All right, Rick Leventhal, thanks very much. Again, there is so much going on. It's difficult to update you, but you're looking at the cloud of dust, debris, smoke, and probably crumbled concrete over Lower Manhattan. The twin towers of the World Trade Center are essentially gone. 110 stories each, more or less. They are gone now. All of this taking place within the last 2 hours after they were struck by 2 airplanes. American Airlines is now confirming that its Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles was hijacked, and apparently one of that plane was one of the 2 that slammed into one of the World Trade Center towers. We don't know anything more about the loss of life, but it is going to be considerable. David Schuster is with us now, again, not far from the Pentagon. David?
Well, John, I'm actually inside the Pentagon in our office at the Outer Ring, and again, we can confirm for you that intelligence sources are telling us that it was a U.S. Air 737 that crashed into the south end of the Pentagon at approximately 9:40 this morning. The Pentagon has been evacuated, but we do want to point out that at parts of the Pentagon, key personnel are still here, including the National Military Command Center. This is in the basement of the Pentagon, and sort of a bunker type of a facility that is essentially designed to withstand direct attacks on the Pentagon. And we're told that officials there are still in that particular part of the Pentagon, are coordinating any possible U.S. response, as well as trying to gather intelligence information, counterintelligence information, and essentially act as a clearinghouse from all the various intelligence agencies in Washington. There have been reports of precautions being taken at the Central Intelligence Agency in McLean, Virginia, at the National Security Agency. But again, here at the Pentagon, while most of the Pentagon and its 23,000 employees have been evacuated, the National Military Command Center at the base of the Pentagon is still here. You can actually smell the smoke now in virtually all of the hallways at the Pentagon, and fire trucks and sirens going off on the south side. But where we are on the northern side of the Pentagon in one of the outer rings, my producer Chris Wright says he could not feel any of the aftershocks of the explosion. There was no noise when the plane apparently crashed this morning at 9:40. But again, most of the Pentagon has been cleared out. Smoke pretty thick here in the halls. But some officials, of course, still at the Pentagon in the offices that are designed for some of these very scenarios. John?
All right, David Schuster at the Pentagon, thanks very much. It appears, and we had the report from our Brian Wilson in Washington not too long ago, it appears, Brian told us that, that there was a report of a hijacked plane south of Washington, D.C. and headed toward the nation's capital. Now, it appears that that is the flight that went down about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. We told you that there was a confirmation from the Somerset County Airport. Authorities are saying that that may be the plane that Brian Wilson spoke of. Let's take you back again to New York and an absolutely horrific scene in lower Manhattan. The entire lower end of the island covered in smoke and floating debris. And what's missing? The Twin Towers of the World Trade Center, 110 stories high. You are looking at the pictures from, the last half hour or so as the first tower simply collapsed on itself. This, and look at the debris raining down on other buildings. Imagine the horror. Now, here comes the second tower. This is the one that had the TV antenna on top, simply imploding on itself. 110 stories, the workplace of some 50,000 people. America, the loss of life here is going to be tremendous. Molly Falconer is at one of the New York area hospitals. Molly, it's got to be a scene of absolute chaos there.
John, this is an area under siege. The police have blocked off a block radius around one of the main hospitals here in New York, and paramedics are coming out onto the street asking people in the crowd to give blood. I'm sorry, the phone lines are going in and out, but they're asking people in the crowd to give blood to the people who are coming into this hospital. There are stretchers out on the streets on dollies draped in white sheets waiting for the injured to come in. I've seen ambulance after ambulance ferrying people into this hospital. It is a scene of utter chaos. The police have locked down this block. They're trying to keep people away, but people are standing at the barricade trying to find out who's inside this hospital. As far as we know, most of the burn victims are going up to Cornell Hospital. Some are going to Bellevue, but the majority are going here to St. Vincent's Hospital because they have a trauma one-level center here that is to take care of the worst of the victims who are coming in. Sirens just keep going for us, and the crowds are just getting heavier. Most of the people here can also see the World Trade Center, both of the towers. We heard the crowds watch them come down. People are in tears. They shouted watching the second tower come down, and now all we can see is way downtown billows of black and gray smoke while the sirens here just keep coming into the hospital. John, we'll keep you up to date.
All right, Molly Falconer, thanks very much. And that is perhaps something that you can do if you are watching our coverage anywhere in America. Donating blood is going to be very urgent today. The New York area hospitals are going to be swamped, and New York City itself may not be the place to try to do it. But anywhere in America, if you can donate blood, I think it will be helpful. Now, we are once again trying to find out exactly what happened in western Pennsylvania, where a plane went down, a large plane went down just north of the airport, the Somerset County Airport, about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. These live pictures on your screen now show you the scene in lower Manhattan where the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center essentially are gone. We have with us on the phone another former Secretary of Defense, Caspar Weinberger. Mr. Weinberger, it's good of you to join us. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
How should, you know how Washington works, what should be happening right now?
Well, I think probably what is happening, that is the city is virtually shutting down. You see police and little knots in all the corners, and all the police cars are out of the police stations, and every available fire engine is moving toward the Pentagon. And I suppose there are going to be other targets where they'll have to go to too. The rumors are floating all over the place, and it's generally a real siege situation. It's very much as if the whole city were under attack, whereas probably it's the two or three principal targets, but. The cumulative effect is that of a city under siege.
Have you ever planned for this kind of an attack in your experience at the Pentagon?
The attempt is to plan for everything, and there were always various discussions of what form an attack could take. Most likely one was a suicide car bomb or a bus or some heavy vehicle being driven up to the Pentagon, as happened in Beirut and in various other places. I think an aerial attack was considered not one of the things you heavily planned against. On the other hand, the city is ringed with Air Force bases and Navy bases, and the ability to get defensive planes in the air is very, very high, and at the same time you would do what is being done, and that is closing off the entire airspace so that you, in effect, the whole Washington area is a no-fly zone, so that any planes that can't identify themselves that get into that are to be shot down. And those are the orders. That was basically the response that was always contemplated, but nothing on this scale was ever contemplated.
You know that there are going to be cries for revenge, for a response. Can America respond immediately, and if so, how?
Well, the response has to be a response that is targeted at the people who did it. But there will undoubtedly be cries for revenge, and it's the slightest confirmation of who did it or where it came from. These will be pursued. The loss of life has to be absolutely staggering, because the two twin towers at the Trade Center, there was not time to get them evacuated, and they're both down, and the opportunities are tremendous. Now, of course, they've evacuated the principal targets, the White House and the Capitol building, and various other points in the city. But certainly there'll be calls for revenge, and it's important that we identify the people who did it, and that they be destroyed as quickly as possible. And that's a proper response.
All right. Secretary Caspar Weinberger, former Secretary of Defense, thanks very much for being with us. Just this word, one of our producers in Afghanistan has spoken with the Taliban, the titular government of Afghanistan, I should say. The Taliban denies any responsibility. Now, that is not to say that the Taliban speaks for Osama bin Laden, but the Taliban, the government or would-be government, not recognized yet by the United States as the government of Afghanistan, is denying any complicity or any responsibility for these attacks.
Well, clearly, some terrorist experts that I've spoken to this morning say this has the signature of Osama bin Laden, that he has had pilots, although these apparently may be at least 2 hijackings, but he has had pilots on his payroll. 3 of the of alleged conspirators who were involved in the East African bombing trial here in New York had pilots' licenses. Not to say that that's what happened here, but they seem to indicate that this would have that signature. And John, I'm hearing a figure of 10,000 here in New York City, perhaps for casualties on the World Trade Center.
And it could go higher than that. Britt Hume, our managing editor, is in Washington, D.C. Britt, what are you hearing there?
Well, you're seeing, John, that live picture from our station, WTTG, of the smoke and dust still coming from the Pentagon. And what we now understand is the case is in the place where that plane hit. We believe it now to have been a 737 commercial flight coming in. The walls of the the wall of the building, the outer wall of the building, and of course that building, as you know, is a series of concentric rings, so that when you hit the outer wall of the building, you're only affecting really that part of it, but that those walls are down, and you can see the gutted areas inside, damage in that particular part of that very large building. Very extensive indeed. In addition, there was an earlier broadcast report here in Washington that there'd been a car bomb outside the State Department. Terry Schultz, our reporter at the State Department, has talked to senior officials who say that that is not true. The State Department has, however, been evacuated, as has the Justice Department, national monuments, and all other major public buildings in Washington in terms of absolutely non-essential personnel. So you see something approaching now here in Washington, the kind of lockdown that we have now already seen in New York. The worry for officials obviously is that while airplanes have done the great damage so far, they can have no guarantee that that will be the only kind of attack that will be launched, so they have to take seriously any warning, any suspicious package, anything else that they hear that might indicate a further attack of a different kind.
All right, Britt Hume in Washington, thanks very much. We have a report that the plane that went down in western Pennsylvania is a 767. That's, of course, a wide-bodied plane capable of carrying upwards of 350 people. So there is a significant amount, the possibility of a significant amount of loss of life. However, it should be pointed out, we are hearing reports that that crash near Pittsburgh may not be related to all of this. As you can imagine, the air traffic control system is overloaded, to say the least, at this point. Nationwide, there is a lockdown on flights. No new flights have been allowed to take off nationwide for the last 2 hours. It is an air traffic controller's nightmare to keep those planes not only on the ground, but also to get on the ground those planes that had been in the air. And again, you are looking at the pictures of Lower Manhattan, where the World Trade Center is gone. The Twin Towers slammed into today in a coordinated attack by jetliners. We're seeing one of them here on taped replay. This happened about 10 minutes after 9. A jetliner slamming into the World Trade Center after an earlier jetliner, apparently hijacked from American Airlines. Here is the first of those towers coming down. This is the one that was actually hit by the second plane. It was hit lower. There was more weight on those steel girders that had been damaged. And here comes the second tower, the tower with the signature television antenna on top. Both of them simply imploding in on themselves.